All right, we're going to be beginning a series on indexing basics, part one. This is for, clustered indexes and non-clustered indexes as well. We're going to be looking at the basics, and the first beginning part of this is why should we index a column? And when starting on indexing, before we go more deep in the technical, what's happening behind the scenes, we need to understand when we can make a really strong case for an index and when we can make a case against an index, right? And so the more familiar we are with how a table is read, especially the read-to-write ratio, because remember that indexes add overhead to writing, the more we can make a case for an index or a case against an index. So one of the best-selling books of all time, I think the best-selling book of all time, is the KJV Bible. And let's imagine that the KJV Bible had no verses, no chapters, no page numbers, no table of contents, no glossary, no index. Imagine that you were trying to find the book of Jonah in that scenario, okay? And I would say, okay, I'm going to give you this book. It's not organized at all. Find the book of Jonah. How are you going to efficiently find the book of Jonah? I mean, that's going to be really difficult to do, right? Now imagine that there's 1 billion people and I tell them to find the book of Jonah. Oh, and, there's people waiting on this. They need to know where this is at. So 1 billion different people are all trying to find the book of Jonah from one book. And each person has to actually get it, right? I mean, that's some serious overhead. That is a simple example of the value, if you would, of things like a table of contents, a page number, a chapter. In the case of the Bible, it has verses. It's very unusual for books. Most books don't have verses. But verses, if you would, are kind of a system of organization as well, right? I mean, you can kind of pinpoint very quickly by saying this book, this chapter, this verse, and someone can find that fairly quickly using like the table of contents, the glossary, the index, etc. So essentially what those are just ways of indexing that book. And many other books, like if you were to pull up Harry Potter, I've actually never read Harry Potter, but I'm pretty sure that there's chapters of books and you can go to the table of contents. I'm almost sure there's a table of contents, and those are very popular books as well. And you can find where those chapters are fairly quickly. Now, in the case of Harry Potter, there probably isn't verses, right? So, yeah, but I mean, if you find, whatever chapter you're looking for, then you can search through that chapter. The idea is you don't have to read the entire book to find what you need, right? So if we actually ran a system that way, where there was absolutely no organizational structure at all, yeah, our system would crash like crazy. Now, we can make a strong case against building any index, right? Let's take the case of Harry Potter. For someone like myself who's never read it, is there any value to me personally with the table of contents? No. And the reason why it does have it is for the people who do read it, right? So there are cases where we may only read from a table, let's say, once every 5 years. Even if there's 1 million records in that table, is it really efficient to build an index for that table? I mean, and what I love about that question, by the way, is that every single person watching this video could have a different answer to that question. So fundamentally, the purpose of indexing is to reduce the amount of time it takes to return data, as well as to reduce the use of system resources. That's very important, and from the beginning, that's super important, because you will run into situations, I've run into many, where you will see the inverse of that, which is someone indexes, there's 16 indexes on a table with 4 columns, 14 of which are not used. Well, that is the opposite problem, right? That's a person who's indexing it so much that it's no longer efficient what they're doing, right? So from the beginning, understanding why we're indexing is important, because then we can make a case for a particular index, or in some cases, make a case against building an index. There are environments, OLTP environments out there, that do not use indexing at all. They simply use updating statistics, and that's it. And because of the way that those environments are built, that is the correct approach.